Hi friends, this is Angela again with Wildvioletsart. It's Marvelous Monday and I'm going through a series of videos that will show the beginner stamper what to expect when they get to stamping. Now obviously last week if you weren't able to catch that, you might want to just scroll down and watch that video as well. It's just some basic tools and we'll go over some of those things again just briefly. We're going to use the same stamp set because I want to show you by using that same set, some of the other things that you can do with it to make it that much prettier. So let me just get this out of the way. So we went through the catalog briefly, and I explained to you that a stamp set along with dies or with a punch are considered a bundle. And when you go through the catalog, you'll find tons of different stamp sets and bundles. And we're using this Lovely in Linen or the Lovely and Lasting stamp set and punch. And as you recall, we made this card. Well, we're going to make this card a little bit better, but I'm going to show you some basics on how I go about figuring that out real quick. So let me just make my this the feature so you can see everything. Okay, so this is page 25, 24, and 25 of the annual catalog for 2022 through April 2023. And it's a really pretty set. It's got all kinds of really beautiful ideas. It does have coordinating cardstock that I don't have at this time, but we're just doing a really basic card, and I thought this was a good one because it's got such nice clear images. So when you get a stamp set, it could be rubber or it could be photopolymer. This one is photopolymer. And when you look at the stamp set in the catalog, it's going to show you which blocks that you're going to need. So there's a block A, C, D, and E. So this one is a block A, and you can see it's pretty small, but it's for little things like these little specks, this little flower, that little leaf. You can see it fits, but it doesn't fit everything. Okay, so let's just leave that here. So then they want block C. So this one is the block C. And you can see that it fits all the verses really nicely. So that one works great as well. And then they want D. And looks like I forgot that one. So here is block D. And so you can see that you need it for that one. And you also need it for this one here. Okay. Yeah, this one's too small for that, but it works really well for that one. And then the other one that you need is block E. And that's this really big one. And that's what we used for the large flowers this last week. There's all kinds of other sizes. This is an I, this one's an H. And I sometimes use the H for long ones. There's a little tiny skinny one called, that's G, and I think it works great for little ones like that. But you don't need to have them all. When you buy a stamp set, just get the ones that they recommend, and then slowly you can increase your sets over time. Okay. So when I'm working with a card and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, typically, you can pick one or two colors, and these are all the different colors that Stampin' Up! Has in their cardstock. There's specialty cardstocks as well, but as you can see, there's just tons and tons of choices that you can make. Now this is one of the color that I'm using. It's called Orchard Oasis. And when you buy color, you can either get an assortment of that color family. So Orchid Oasis is actually one of the in colors. And each year they come up with in colors and they hold them for 2 years. So these are the last year's colors, and they're good until April of this year. And then the new 2022 to 24 colors, Orchid Oasis is one of those. So this is a color family. This is a color family. Then we have brights, we have neutrals, we have regals, we have subtles. And then you've got your basics. You've got basic black, ivory, bronze, basic white, very vanilla. So they have markers in those colors. They have stamp pads, obviously. They've got refills in those colors. And then, of course, all their cardstock. So when the cardstock is purchased, like I said, you can get an assortment in a color family, and they'll have 2 sheets of each. I think they have more when you get the in colors because you're only buying 5 colors at that time. But like this one is the Mossy Meadow, and they come 24 to a pack. This is one of their colored cardstocks. When you buy the basic white cardstock, you get 40 to a pack. So it's a really good deal, and their quality is really high. You'll find this is really smooth paper, and they're very consistent. So it's a really nice quality. So I'm looking at this card, and I want to make this a little bit different. I want it to maybe have a frame of some sort. So what I did a while back is I took some cardstock that I didn't use very much of, and I started with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece. And then what I did is I reduced the next piece by 1/8 of an inch so that I could see what it looks like when these 2 layers are on top of each other. And so you can see that each one of these is 1/8 of an inch smaller. So what I want to do is I want to use the white card base, but I want to add a layer of this Orchid Oasis and then add another layer of white to frame it. So what I would do, so as you recall, we start with an 8 1/2 by 11 and we cut it in half, and then you fold it in half and you have your card base. I'm going to use my bone folder to smooth down the edge so I have a nice crisp edge for my card. So then I can start with an 8 1/2 by 11, but I have some smaller ones that are also cut down to 5 1/2 to 4 1/4, which is 1/4 of a sheet. Now, if you remember right, I had all these measurements on here. And so what I want to use is and let's just start with the basic. I want to go a 1/4 inch smaller. So 5 1/2, 4 1/4, 1/4 inch smaller is going to be 4 inches by 5 1/4. So I want this piece to be cut down a little bit so that it's 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I would layer that on this, and I'll glue that down in a minute. But now I need a piece of cardstock, a white one that I can stamp on, that's 1/4 inch smaller than that. So then I'm going to my next one, which is 5 inches by 3 3/4. So 5 inches, oops, I need white. Just so you know what I'm doing, I have all these bags of cardstock and I keep all the little scraps, not too little, because I can always fit a verse on something this size or a verse on something that size. So I'm a little bit miserly with my cardstock. Okay, so we need 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And of course, I'm going to save these and put them in my bag because I will use them. It's just a habit I got into years ago, and it served me well. Okay, these little of scraps I do not save. Some people do, and they get creative with them. Okay, so this card, instead of having just one white, I'm going to layer with a piece of the Orchid Oasis, and I'm going to glue it on there. Then once I stamp this, then I'm going to glue it on here. So let's prepare our blocks. So again, I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to use this E block for the large flower. For the frame, I'm going to use the D block. And then instead of thank you, let's do thinking of you. And for that one, I think this B block will work, even though it doesn't mention B block, but I think it's small enough that it'll fit just fine. Okay, and I will need a scrap of white from a little verse. All right. So for this big one, again with the stamp pads, you're going to lift up where it has the little notch. You're going to push it all the way back, and then you're going to slide it forward. So let's just do that again. So you can see the little notch, pulling it up all the way back, and then sliding it forward. And then when you want to close it, just do the opposite. Okay? All right. And I have my handy little sponge or chamois, and it's damp. So you can use a chamois to clean your stamps with, or Stampin' Up! Also has a Stampin' Scrub. And they also have a spray that would go on it that you would use to clean your stamps. But I like the chamois. It's easy to use, easy to wash. So I'm going to just ink up and I'm going to stamp on this piece of cardstock. And I'm going to shift up my flower up to this side of it so that my verse doesn't cover up any of the flower. Okay. Clean up any extra. The sooner you clean them off, the less they end up getting stained, but they will stain, photopolymer especially. Okay. I'm going to use my fingers to wipe off the residue so that it picks up the ink better. It's still not quite doing it. Just going to rough it up a little bit. There we go. That's better. Okay. And then remember we did the frame, because with frame we're going to punch it out. So cute. Super simple, easy little greeting. Okay, so as a reminder, putting this upside down, you unlock it because normally it's going to be flat like this for easy storage. And then I'm going to unlock it, and you can see this is how it looks. But I'm going to put it upside down so I can see where my verse is. And that way I can make sure I am punching it in the right place. And I almost didn't get that right. There we go. All right. This scrap I'm not keeping. I'm going to close up my stamp pad so I don't accidentally get something on there. Okay, so we have everything that we need. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this on. So Stampin' Up! Also sells glue. They have, and I think less is more. So I'm just going to put a little bit down. Because the glue actually, the adhesive, it works really well. So there's other kinds of adhesives. So let me just show you. They have rolls of glue dots. So if you're a crafter, you're familiar with different rolls of glue dots. But if not, they have little tiny dots of glue. Not sure if you can see that, but there's little glue dots, and they're really nice for small things like ribbons. There's the dimensionals, like I used last week, and we're going to pop up the little verse again, so we'll be using that in a minute. If you're not a fan of glue, there's something called tear and tape, and it works really great. You just lift it up, and then you can tear it off, or you can cut it off, and then you just take the adhesive or the backing off of it, and it's double-sided tape, and it works really well. It works for cards, for projects, and such. They also have foam adhesive strips, and they have foam adhesive pads. This strip, you might wonder what that's for. If you can see the lines in there, it's pre-cut. And what I do is I'll use that when I'm trying to get a little dimension. Like I made a shaker card, and you can see the foam along the edge, and it allows it to be 3D. And then you can see I've got little gems and sparkles, sequins, little balls shaking around in there. So that's what that's for. So I'll let you kind of just get a peek. This is what we're going to be doing in my next class. Okay, so those are some of the adhesives. And then now I'm going to glue this piece on. And remember, these are all a 1/4 inch difference. So I've got 5.5 by 4 1/4, and then on top of that I've got 5 1/4 by 4, and then I've put 5 inches by 3 3/4, and I'm going to glue that on. And you can see how pretty it is when it gets framed up like that. There's some that just love layers, but some cards, they're okay simple. They don't have to be they don't have to have tons of layers. But you can see that when it's got some layers, there's just something so pretty about having it all framed. Okay, so we're going to use dimensionals again to add the verse. And I'm just going to use 3. These dimensionals, just they're foam, and you can see they're just about an, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch thick or an 1/8 of an inch thick, and they just pop up elements of your card. And I'm going to put the little verse down here. One thing that would make this verse a little pretty is having some embellishments. And these are the 2022-24 in color matte decorative dots. And I'm just going to add a couple here, and then one up there. And it just makes it complete. I typically lay things down in odd numbers, so 3 or 5, when I'm placing embellishments, just to kind of not have it, I'm not into making things symmetrical, I'm making them asymmetrical. So like this card, I used dimensionals to pop it up. And it looks like my ribbon made it so it wasn't sticky anymore. And then I added 5 embellishments. And then I've got 2 leaves over here, but I also have this snowflake, this iridescent snowflake. So that's 3 elements. I've got my verse, and then I've got the 5 embellishments. So to me, that kind of makes it work together really well. So here we've got the 1 element, but you could see with the 3, you've got the 4 flowers. The 5th would be this pretty verse frame, and then the 3 embellishments. Okay, so that's it for today. I'll continue to bring you more information every week. We'll try doing something a little harder next week. I really appreciate you joining me. And if you have any questions, I wouldn't mind you adding your comments. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. So we'll just keep working on this series. We'll make it a little more complicated. By the end of the year, we'll be doing things like stamparatus and kissing techniques and all kinds of fun stuff. So I look forward to seeing you. Thank you for joining me.